Good evening, everybody. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's a pleasure to be here. I can't tell you the sort of emotional roller coaster that I've gone through as we've been working together to put the exhibit together, but also to be a part of the events that are happening. Currently, I'm a full professor and chair of the Chicana and Chicano Studies Department at Metropolitan State University, and I'm a current columnist for the Seminario. I write on public policy issues, history, whatever the case might be.
Hi, buenas noches. My name is Tony Garcia. I'm the artistic director at Su Teatro, which is a cultural arts center. I'm also on the affiliate faculty member of the Chicano and Chicana Studies Department. Are we supposed to talk about our moms too? My 93-year-old mother, who's still alive and still as rowdy as ever, her maiden name was Torres. And during the movement, I was 15 years old and I played guitar a lot and watched people during that time period. And later on, things changed as we started to establish Su Teatro as a performing arts company that addressed a lot of issues that we're going to be talking about tonight.
Buenas noches, my name is Shirley Romero Otero. I was born and raised in San Luis, graduated from the schools there at Centennial. I am an heir to the Sangre de Cristo land grant, and I am a plaintiff in the lawsuit that was filed in 1981 that is still making its way to the courts. I was one of the co-founders of the Land Rights Council that facilitated the lawsuit that, like I said, is still going through the courts. I'm an educator by trade. I recently retired from the school district in Mesa Valley, which is Grand Junction. I taught ethnic studies for nearly 2 decades and coordinated a graduation and retention program for Latino students and other students of color. Recently went back home to San Luis, where I'm still involved with the school system, Centennial School, and I am the executive director of Moon Mountains, which is a youth project that we have working with the students in San Luis, trying to instill the cultural values that we have in that community and hopefully continue after this case goes through the appeal process. I have been married for 32 years to Ray Otero. I have 4 daughters, and I'm a grandmother of 2 grandsons, Isaiah and Maximiliano.
Thanks. I'm Al Goudelet, and I was born and raised in Trinidad. My parents were the most beautiful people ever. I can't ever understand why anybody would say something bad about their parents. But my dad was very political. We went to first grade. My mom was in first grade also. But they were political. My dad built his house out of adobe, and we helped make the adobes. Come from poverty. But I guess my claim to fame, though, is that I was born on June 18th, 1943, and 17 years apart from Corky Gonzalez. He was born on the same day that I was. Been involved politically. I helped organize the Brown Berets in Pueblo. I was the candidate for La Raza Unida, the governorship. First time in the history of the state of Colorado that a Hispanic was placed on the ballot through petition. We were trying to get 10% of the vote so we could have an established party, and we'll get into that later on. I came close to being sent to prison in 1975. The law enforcement people in Pueblo, the district attorney, plus a member of Interpol, tried to plant 14 balloons of heroin on me. Anyway, I would have gone to prison. That would have happened.
I'm a brown woman and I'm a Chicana, so I never say any other term. And being Chicana, as you heard me say, is knowing who you are, being proud of that, but having a political consciousness to fight for human rights. I run Escuela Tlatelolco, which was born out of the crusade for justice in the Chicano civil rights movement. It's not what I wanted to do. I went kicking and screaming in there. I actually loved organizing. I organized with the Texas farm workers and organized in the migrant stream, creating havoc wherever I went, and rallies and marches with the Young Lords, took over a church in Chicago, and with Mayo Mexican American Youth Organization in Texas, took over a ministry there for several months. But I always came home to Denver, who, in my mind, this is the birthplace of the Chicano civil rights movement of the 60s. And the birthplace here in Colorado. We don't get the credit because we don't write the books like they write in California, But even in California, they recognize that and recognize what the art that was revitalized, teatro, and music. I mean, they do have a lot of respect, Chicanos and our people in our community. Thank you for coming out, and I hope we have a great dialogue.
Hello, my name is Ricardo Rocha. I am a student at MSU Denver. I'm from Guanajuato, Mexico. I identify myself as Mexican. Spent about 6 years with my family in New Mexico, and I've been here for over 12. I work for Claro, the Colorado Latino Leadership Advocacy and Research Organization. I've mentored, and I spend a lot of my time working with the youth, with the Chicano Movement, and what remains, and fighting the struggles that are made from 40 or 50 years ago.
I had just wanted to mention I kind of said a couple of things about myself. I'm from Wichita, Kansas, and yes, there are Chicanos there. But it's an interesting, for me in my lifetime, the people that I've encountered, Rodolfo Croqui Gonzalez, Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, I met them all. And so it's amazing to me to be in a classroom and teach about people that I knew personally and at different levels, and to me that's been an honor. I'm what we call in Chicana and Chicano studies an activist scholar. That is, you're an activist first, and then you write about it and you become a scholar. And one of the areas that I was involved in the 1970s was the lettuce boycott. I worked with Len Avila and Ricardo Longoria and Jose Calderon, a bunch of folks, Dolores Huerta, that I met at that time. And I'm also one of the founders of the current Cesar Chavez Peace and Justice Committee, and proud to say that in our next event, we have famed sculpture and muralist Manuel Martinez, and we're going to put a bust up in the park of Cesar Chavez to complement the work that all the farm workers did, because that's really what it's about. Anytime that we leave a legacy, it's really about leaving things to remind people about what happened, because in the end, we haven't achieved social justice. That's a myth right now. We're still fighting for it. Question: was the issue of racism adequately addressed during the Chicano movement? I mean, the issue of identity, do we have that today, or are we still struggling?
I think that definitely the issue of racism was addressed, and it was very, very difficult. The problem that we've had, and a lot of the young people that we work with, is that they suffer from a poor image of self. If you have a poor image of self, you're not going to succeed. What happened with the movement is that all of a sudden, our young people start to take pride. One of the things that I learned about adolescence is that once they take a stand, they take a stand. And that metamorphosis took place in our community because they had a poor image of self. Once they start to learn their history and then start to be proud of themselves, they started to succeed and stay in school. I tell you, I have a bunch of young people that I work with that are successful people right now because they went from having that poor image of self to being positive and being proud of their heritage.
I can only speak for myself and the transformations that went through me during the Chicano movement. We live in a society that is created on racial domination. And if you never learn your true history, where you come from, who you are, what your lineage is, then you're going to fall into that myth and assimilate. I think the Chicano movement for me did exactly that. The Chicano movement was the foundation from which I learned at a very young age, raised my children, and continue to live my life, whether it's spiritual, political, social, economic. It's an identity that was formed. The Chicano movement addressed this issue very well, very well. That's what it was about. That's why young people on the streets, whether it was through the Crusade for Justice, the United Farm Worker, the land grant movement, whatever it was about identity. And once you learned your identity, you learned your true history. And that empowered us. It was the most powerful thing that has ever happened to me in my life. Is it being addressed adequately now? Absolutely not.
We're kind of in the identity business. I don't know that we started off to be, but that's kind of how it evolved. Our identity is an ever-evolving issue, and we marched through the streets shouting Chicano Power because we had no power.
So we have to struggle ourselves. I sometimes say we drink the Kool-Aid, we're very westernized. we're very white in many ways. If you go to Mexico and South America and to poor lands, very different. But I'll never forget that my father reminded, I think I wanted to give up on escuela and I wanted to go out and make money, not work in a nonprofit, have a nice house, do nice things, and he kind of slapped me into reality, verbally. He said, that's not the work that we do. Our work is to ensure that you're always opening people's eyes and educating. That's being Chicano. And at Escuela Tlatelolco, we teach the history from mother out, not from Europe in. So at our school, they learn who they are, where they come. And in Mexico, I realized what Dad said. Somos la misma familia, con las mismas raíces. Shame on us if we want to deny that.
I think the youth now have lost a sense of heritage. It is so fast-paced. We're focused on, like you said, buying that expensive car or in the expensive clothes, which is awful. I'm an awful example of it, but that is just who our youth are. And as Ramon asked if this is still alive, have we fixed it? Basically, I said no. The issue has morphed. We already stated. I think that we're part of a system and we've forgotten where we come from.